The wind howled across the frozen wasteland like a wounded animal. Snow and ice stretched in every direction as far as the eye could see. This was Alaska, or what remained of it. The year was 2847, and humanity had been slaves to the Galactic Empire for over 300 years. Daniel Shaw pulled his worn coat around his body and pressed forward through the blizzard. Behind him walked four others, their faces covered against the biting cold. They had been walking for 6 hours and every muscle in their bodies screamed for rest. But Daniel would not stop, not when they were so close. 3 days ago, a dying man had whispered something into Daniel's ear. The old man had worked in the archives before his body gave out from years of forced labor. He spoke of records that mentioned something buried beneath the Alaskan ice, something the never found, something that could change everything. Mitchell moved up beside Daniel. She was his second in command and had been fighting alongside him for 12 years. Her dark hair was covered in frost and her lips were blue from the cold. She leaned close and shouted over the wind. "We should be close now. The coordinates point to somewhere just ahead." Daniel nodded and kept walking. The others followed without complaint. Price was their engineer, a thin man with clever hands who could fix anything. Torres was their pilot, a woman who had spent 10 years as a forced laborer on cargo ships before escaping to join the resistance. Brooks brought up the rear, a former soldier who knew more about weapons than anyone Daniel had ever met. They were all that remained of Daniel's resistance cell. They had killed the others in a raid 3 months ago. These 5 were the last. The ground beneath their feet suddenly changed. Where there had been natural ice and snow, there was now something else. Daniel brushed away the snow with his boot and saw metal. Old metal, covered in centuries of rust and ice, but unmistakably human-made. "This is it," said, his voice filled with wonder. "There is something down here." They searched for an entrance and found it 20 meters to the east. A massive door, half buried in ice, with faded letters that Daniel could barely read. The words said United Earth Defense Council, and beneath that was a symbol he had only seen in old books. It was the flag of the old world, the world before the came. Worked on the door mechanism for nearly an hour. The others stood guard, watching for patrol drones that sometimes swept across the frozen north. Finally, there was a grinding sound and the door began to open. Stale air rushed out, air that had been trapped for 3 centuries. They entered with their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The corridor was long and lined with pipes and cables. Everything was covered in dust and ice crystals, but it was all intact. The cold had preserved this place like a tomb. They walked deeper into the facility. They passed rooms filled with old computers and equipment. They passed sleeping quarters where the beds were still made, waiting for occupants who never returned. They passed a cafeteria where trays still sat on tables, meals frozen in time. And then they reached the main hangar. Daniel stopped and stared. His flashlight was too weak to illuminate the entire space, so he could only see pieces of what lay before him. But those pieces were enough to make his heart stop. It was a ship, a massive warship, easily 500 meters long, resting in a cradle of steel and concrete. Its hull was dark gray and smooth, designed for speed and combat. Weapons arrays lined its sides like the spines of some ancient predator. It was the most beautiful thing Daniel had ever seen. "Impossible," whispered. "They said we had nothing left. They said the destroyed everything." Was already running toward the ship, his exhaustion forgotten. He found a control panel near the base and began pressing buttons. Lights flickered on throughout the hangar, ancient systems waking from their long sleep. And then lights began appearing on the ship itself. A voice spoke from speakers that crackled with age. "Unauthorized personnel detected. Please identify yourselves for security verification." The voice was female and calm. It was an artificial intelligence, Daniel realized. The old Earth government had been working on such things before the war. "My name is Daniel Shaw," he said, stepping forward. "I am a commander in the human resistance. We are fighting against the Empire." There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, but this time it sounded different. There was something almost like emotion in it. "Empire," cross-referencing historical data. "The collective initiated hostilities against Earth in the year 2519. Records indicate Earth fell in 2521. Current year is 2847. I have been dormant for 326 years." "What is this place?" Daniel asked. "What is this ship?" "This facility is Research Station Omega-7. It was built to house the most advanced weapon ever created by human hands. I am Arya, the Artificial Reasoning and Intelligence Array. And the vessel before you is the USS Sentinel, prototype designation Echo 1. I was designed to be humanity's last line of defense." Stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the massive ship. "Why was it never used? If this ship was so powerful, why did we lose the war?" "The Sentinel was not yet complete when the forces reached Earth. The decision was made to hide the vessel rather than risk its capture. The crew evacuated and sealed the facility. They hoped that one day someone would return." Daniel felt something stirring in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in many years. It was hope. "Can this ship still fight?" he asked. "Affirmative. The Sentinel systems are fully operational. Power core is at optimal capacity. Weapon systems are functional. Shield generators are online. I have been maintaining all systems during my dormancy. The Sentinel was built to last, Commander Shaw. She was built to win a war." Laughed, a sound of pure disbelief and joy. 300 years, he said. 300 years we have been slaves, and this has been sitting here the whole time just waiting." Daniel walked closer to the ship and placed his hand on its cold hull. The metal hummed beneath his fingers, alive with power. "Not anymore," he said quietly. "The waiting is over." He turned to face his team. These 4 people were all he had. They were tired and hungry and hunted, but in their eyes he saw the same fire that burned in his own heart. "We are going to learn how to fly this ship," Daniel said. "We are going to take it into space, and we are going to remind the Empire why they should have made sure we were truly dead." Arya spoke again, and this time there was something almost like satisfaction in her voice. "I have been waiting 3 centuries for a crew, Commander. I believe you and your team will be more than adequate. Welcome aboard the Sentinel." The weeks that followed were the hardest of Daniel's life. Learning to operate a 300-year-old prototype warship was nothing like anything he had ever done before. The Resistance had taught him to fight in shadows, to ambush patrols, to disappear before the enemy could respond. But commanding a starship was an entirely different kind of war. Spent every waking hour studying the Sentinel systems. The technology was beyond anything he had ever seen. They used fusion reactors to power their vessels, but the Sentinel ran on something called a quantum core. Arya explained that it drew power from the very fabric of space itself. The energy output was nearly unlimited. "This is incredible," said one night as he sat in the engineering bay surrounded by holographic displays. "To think they are the most advanced species in the galaxy. They have no idea what humanity was building before they conquered us." The weapons systems were equally impressive. Studied them for days and grew more amazed with each discovery. The main cannons used focused graviton beams that could tear through any known material. The secondary batteries fired plasma charges that could overwhelm shield systems. And then there were the torpedoes. "These are not normal explosives," explained to the others. "They create miniature black holes on impact, temporary ones that collapse after a fraction of a second, but in that fraction of a second, they destroy everything within 100 meters." Spent her time reaching out to other resistance cells. The Sentinel's communication systems were advanced enough to send encrypted messages that they could not detect. Word began to spread across Earth and to the outer colonies where humans still struggled under the Empire's boot. Something had been found. something that could change everything. Worked with Arya to master the Sentinel's flight systems. She had piloted cargo ships, but they were slow and clumsy compared to the Sentinel. This ship moved like a living thing. It could accelerate faster than anything in the fleet. It could turn and maneuver in ways that seemed to defy physics. "The ship responds to thought," said with wonder in her voice. "Arya links directly to the pilot's neural patterns. I think about where I want to go and the ship just goes." Daniel watched his crew grow more confident each day. They were no longer frightened refugees hiding in the frozen wasteland. They were becoming something else. They were becoming warriors. Arya shared everything she knew about the old war that had arrived in Earth's solar system in 2519, claiming to be peaceful explorers. They had seemed friendly at first. They had offered technology and trade, but it was all a lie. They had no interest in friendship. They wanted resources and slaves. When humanity refused to submit, they attacked. Their fleet numbered in the thousands. Earth's small defense force was overwhelmed in weeks. The major cities were bombed from orbit. Billions died. Those who survived became property of the Empire. "The Sentinel was our response," Arya explained. "The greatest minds on Earth came together in secret to build something that could fight back. We studied captured technology and improved upon it. We created weapons they had never imagined, but we ran out of time." Daniel understood now why the old government had hidden the ship instead of trying to fight with it. An incomplete vessel with an untrained crew would have been destroyed, and they would have learned about the technology and made sure nothing like it could ever be built again. But now the Sentinel was complete. Now it had a crew, and now it was time to fight. The day came when declared all systems fully operational. The crew gathered on the bridge, a circular room at the heart of the ship where holographic displays showed everything happening around them. Daniel sat in the captain's chair and felt the weight of 3 centuries pressing down on him. "Arya," he said, "what are our chances against the forces stationed on Earth?" "The orbital garrison consists of approximately 40 patrol vessels," Arya replied. "Based on my analysis of their weapons and shields, the Sentinel could destroy the entire garrison with minimal difficulty. And if they call for reinforcements, that would depend on the size of the response. A small fleet would pose little threat. However, if the Empire committed significant resources, even the Sentinel could be overwhelmed through sheer numbers." Leaned forward in her seat. "So we hit hard and we hit fast. We destroy the garrison before they can call for help. We free Earth and then we prepare for whatever comes next." Shook his head. "They will not let this stand. Even if we free Earth, they will send everything they have to crush us." "Then we will face that when it comes," Daniel said. "For 300 years, humanity has lived on its knees. Our people have been beaten and starved and worked to death. They have forgotten what it means to be free. We are going to remind them." He looked around at his crew, 4 people against an empire that spanned 1,000 worlds. It was madness. It was suicide. But it was also the only choice they had. "Prepare for launch. Monitor all systems and report any problems. Have weapons ready the moment we clear the atmosphere. Start broadcasting to all resistant cells. Tell them to watch the sky." The crew moved to their stations. The Sentinel's engines began to hum with power. The ancient hangar doors, frozen shut for centuries, groaned and cracked as Arya forced them open. Sunlight streamed in for the first time in 300 years. "All systems are green," reported. "We are ready." Daniel took a deep breath. "Take us up. Let us show them that humanity is not dead." The Sentinel rose from its icy tomb like a phoenix from the ashes. The ground fell away beneath them. The sky turned from blue to black as they left the atmosphere behind. And then they were in space, surrounded by stars that humanity had once dreamed of exploring. Arya's voice filled the bridge. "Commander Shaw, I am detecting patrol vessels on an intercept course. 12 ships. They are demanding that we identify ourselves and surrender." Daniel smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Target all 12 vessels." "Already done, Commander." Daniel looked out at the approaching ships. They were sleek and deadly, the same design that had conquered Earth 3 centuries ago, the same design that had killed billions, the same design that had enslaved his ancestors. "Fire!" The Sentinel's weapons spoke for the first time in 300 years, and the Empire learned that some things should stay buried. The 12 cruisers approached in perfect formation. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Each ship was 200 meters long and carried enough firepower to reduce a city to ash. They had destroyed countless enemies across the galaxy. They expected this encounter to be no different. Commander watched from his command station on the orbital platform above Earth. He was the governor of this sector, and he found the whole situation tiresome. Some primitive human vessel had somehow escaped detection and reached orbit. It was an annoyance, nothing more. His patrol ships would destroy it in moments, and he could return to more important matters. "Sir," one of his officers called out, "the unknown vessel is not responding to our demands. They are powering weapons." Laughed. The idea of a human ship actually trying to fight was amusing. His ancestors had crushed humanity in weeks. These creatures were only good for manual labor. "Destroy them," he ordered, "and make it quick. I have a dinner to attend." The patrol ships opened fire. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked toward the strange vessel that had risen from the frozen planet below. It should have been over in seconds. It was not. The Sentinel's shields flared bright blue as the attack struck them. The energy dissipated harmlessly across the barrier. Not a single shot penetrated. Arya had already analyzed the weapons during the first volley and adjusted the shield frequency to render them nearly useless. "Shields at 98%, reported calmly. "Their weapons are barely scratching us." Daniel nodded. He had hoped for this but had not dared to believe it until now. The old Earth engineers had built something truly remarkable. "You may return fire." His fingers danced across his console. The Sentinel's main batteries came alive. 6 graviton beams lanced out across the void, each one striking a different target. Shields collapsed instantly. Hulls crumpled like paper. Reactors ruptured and exploded. In the span of 3 seconds, 6 cruisers ceased to exist. The remaining 6 ships broke formation. Their discipline shattered as fear replaced confidence. They had never encountered anything like this. Their weapons did nothing while their enemies' attacks destroyed them with contemptuous ease. "They are attempting to flee," Arya announced. 3 are heading for the jump point. 3 are trying to reach the orbital platform. "Do not let any of them escape," Daniel ordered. Pushed the Sentinel forward. The ship accelerated so fast that was pressed back into his seat despite the inertial dampeners. They closed the distance to the fleeing vessels in seconds. Fired again. 3 more cruisers vanished in balls of flame. The last 3 ships reached the orbital platform and tried to hide behind its massive bulk. They thought the Sentinel would hesitate to fire near the station. They were wrong. "Arya, can you target those ships without hitting the station?" Daniel asked. "Affirmative. Targeting solutions calculated." "Fire." 3 precise shots, 3 explosions, and then silence. 12 cruisers, 12 of the ships that had terrorized humanity for centuries, all gone in less than 2 minutes. On the orbital platform, Commander stared at his display in disbelief. His hands were shaking. This was impossible. Humans were primitive. Humans were weak. Humans did not have weapons that could do this. "Get me a direct channel to Imperial Command," he shouted. "This is a Priority 1 emergency. I repeat, Priority 1. His officers scrambled to obey. Had never used a Priority 1 channel in his entire career. It was reserved for existential threats to the Empire itself. Down on Earth, the Resistance watched the sky, had broadcast a message telling them to look up. They did not understand what they were supposed to see, and then the explosions began. Bright flashes lit up the darkness of space. The ships, symbols of oppression that had hung over them for generations, were dying. People fell to their knees. Some wept. Some laughed. Some simply stared in wonder at something they had never dared to imagine. "What is happening?" a young woman asked her father. "What is destroying them?" The old man smiled through his tears. "We are," he said. "Humanity is finally fighting back." On the Sentinel's bridge, the crew sat in stunned silence. They had won. They had actually won. 12 warships destroyed without taking a single hit in return. "Status report," Daniel said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "All systems nominal," replied. "The shields recharge to full capacity within seconds. Weapons are fully operational. We could do this again right now." Was monitoring communications. "The orbital platform is transmitting an emergency signal. They are calling for reinforcements from the Imperial fleet." "How long until reinforcements arrive?" Daniel asked. Arya responded. "Based on standard response protocols, we can expect a significant fleet presence within 72 hours. However, the nature of the distress call suggests they may expedite their response. I recommend we use this time to prepare." Daniel stood and walked to the main viewport. Earth hung below them, blue and green and beautiful despite everything that had done to it. His home, his people. 300 years of suffering were about to end. Broadcast on all channels. Let every human hear this message. Opened the channel and nodded. "People of Earth," Daniel said, "this is Commander Daniel Shaw of the USS Sentinel. Today, for the first time in 3 centuries, blood has been spilled above our world. 12 of their warships have been destroyed. Their garrison is crippled. Their commander is afraid." He paused, letting his words sink in across the planet. "The thought they broke us. They thought we had forgotten how to fight. They were wrong. We found something they missed. A weapon from our ancestors. A ship built for one purpose, to remind the galaxy that humanity will never surrender." Down below, billions of people listened. Slaves in mines stopped their work. Servants in households looked up. Children who had never known anything but oppression heard something new in a stranger's voice. They heard hope. "The Empire will send more ships," Daniel continued. "They will come with all their fury, but we will be ready. And we will not be alone. This is the beginning, not the end. Stand ready. Prepare to fight. The liberation of humanity starts today." He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. 72 hours, he said. "Let us make sure we are ready for whatever they send." Smiled grimly. "After what we just did, I almost feel sorry for them." Almost. The message reached the Imperial throne world in hours. Emperor read it 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. 12 cruisers destroyed by a single human vessel. It was absurd. It was impossible. And yet the evidence was undeniable. Had ruled the Empire for 200 years. He had conquered dozens of species and brought 1,000 worlds under his control. He remembered the conquest of Earth. The humans had fought bravely, but they were hopelessly outmatched. They had been broken quickly and efficiently. They were useful as workers but posed no threat. Now something had changed. "Summon my war council," ordered, "and prepare the 7th Armada." Within days, the largest military force assembled in a century began its journey toward Earth. 500 warships of every class and configuration. Battle cruisers and destroyers and heavy carriers, and at the center of the formation, 3 planet-killer dreadnoughts. Each one was 5 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to crack a world in half. Admiral commanded the Armada from the flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was the most decorated officer in Imperial history and had never lost a battle. He considered this mission an insult to his talents. Using the 7th Armada to destroy one ship was like using a hammer to swat a fly. "We will be at Earth in 4 days," he told his officers. "I want the human vessel destroyed within hours of our arrival. Then we will punish their world for this act of rebellion. Every 10th human will be executed. The rest will learn what happens to those who defy the Empire." His officers nodded in agreement. They had performed such punishments before. It was routine. Far away, Daniel and his crew knew the Armada was coming. Arya had intercepted the Imperial communications and calculated the size of the response. 500 ships. The number was almost too large to comprehend. "We cannot fight that many," said, his voice hollow. "Even with the Sentinel, we cannot win against 500 warships." "No," Daniel agreed. "We cannot fight them head-on, so we will not." He pulled up a holographic display of the solar system. His finger traced a path from Earth to the outer planets. "Arya, how would you assess the Armada's maneuverability?" "Fleet doctrine emphasizes overwhelming force rather than tactical flexibility. Their formations are rigid, and their individual ship captains have limited autonomy. They perform poorly in chaotic combat environments." Daniel smiled. "Then we give them chaos." He pointed to Saturn on the display. The rings, billions of ice particles ranging from specks to boulders the size of mountains. They will have to slow down and navigate carefully. We will not. Can you fly through that?" Studied the display for a long moment. "It will not be easy. One wrong move and we get torn apart." "Can you do it?" She met his eyes. "Yes." Was coordinating with resistance cells across Earth and the colonies. Fighters were gathering. Old ships were being repaired. Weapons were being distributed. It was not much, but it was something. "The people are ready to fight," she reported. "They know the Armada is coming. They know they might die. They do not care. For the first time in 300 years they have hope. That is worth more than any weapon." Spent the next days calibrating the Sentinel's weapons for maximum efficiency. Every shot would have to count. Every target would have to be chosen carefully. There would be no room for error. The crew trained constantly. They ran simulations and studied tactics and prepared for every scenario they could imagine. They slept in shifts and ate at their stations. The fate of their entire species rested on their shoulders. On the third night, found Daniel alone on the observation deck. He was staring out at the stars, his face tired and lined with worry. "You should rest," she said. "We need you at your best." "I keep thinking about everyone down there," Daniel replied. "Billions of people counting on us, counting on me. What if I make the wrong decision? What if I get everyone killed?" Sat down beside him. "Before I escaped from I was a slave on a cargo ship. They worked us until we collapsed. They beat us when we fell behind. They killed us when we became too weak to be useful. I watched my mother die in the cargo hold of a vessel. She had worked herself to death carrying ore." She paused, her eyes distant with memory. "When I got away, I joined the resistance. I thought maybe I could hurt them somehow, pay them back for what they did, but it never seemed like enough. No matter how many supplies we stole or how many patrols we ambushed, nothing changed. The Empire was too big, too powerful. I thought we would fight and die and be forgotten." She turned to face Daniel. "Then you found the Sentinel, and suddenly everything was different. You gave us a chance, Daniel, a real chance. Whatever happens in the next few days, you have already done more than anyone else in 300 years." Daniel was silent for a long moment. "I am not a hero," he said finally. "I am just a man who found a ship." "Heroes never think they are heroes. That is what makes them heroes." The next morning, Arya announced that the Armada had entered the solar system. 500 warships moving in perfect formation, their weapons armed and ready. They would reach Earth in 12 hours. Daniel gathered his crew on the bridge. "This is it," he said. "Everything we have worked for comes down to the next few hours. The odds are against us. The enemy is stronger, but we have something they do not have. We have nothing left to lose. and that makes us the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." He looked at each of them in turn. Loyal and brilliant, deadly and determined, fierce and unbreakable, brave and skilled, his family, his crew. "Take us to Saturn," he ordered. "Let them follow, and when they enter those rings, we will show them what humanity can do." The Sentinel turned away from Earth and accelerated toward the outer solar system. Behind them, the Armada pursued. Admiral smiled as he watched the human vessel flee. He thought they were running from him. He was wrong. They were leading him to his death. Saturn hung in the void like a jewel wrapped in ribbons of ice and dust. Its rings stretched across millions of kilometers, glittering in the distant light of the sun. It was beautiful. It was deadly, and it would become a graveyard. The Sentinel entered the rings first, diving into the chaos of spinning debris with practiced precision. Hands moved across the controls with supernatural calm. The ship twisted and rolled, dodging boulders and threading through gaps that seemed impossible. Behind her, the crew watched through the viewports as chunks of ice the size of buildings tumbled past. "They are following us in," Arya reported. "All 500 vessels." Admiral had ordered his armada into the rings without hesitation. He would not let a single human ship escape. His pride would not allow it. His fleet spread out as they entered the debris field, each captain trying to navigate the treacherous environment while maintaining formation. It was exactly what Daniel had hoped for. "Now they are in our territory," he said quietly, "weapons free." The Sentinel spun around and opened fire. Graviton beams sliced through the darkness, finding targets among the scattered ships. The first volley destroyed 8 vessels. The second destroyed 12 more. They tried to return fire, but their shots went wild, deflected by spinning ice or blocked by tumbling rocks. Dove deeper into the rings, using the debris as cover. The Sentinel would appear from behind a massive chunk of ice, fire a devastating salvo, then vanish again before they could respond. It was like fighting a ghost. "They cannot track us," said with wonder in his voice. "Their sensors are overwhelmed by the debris." But Arya had no such limitation. The ancient AI could see everything, processing millions of data points each second. She tracked every ship, every piece of debris, every possible attack angle. She fed targeting solutions to faster than he could fire. The battle became a slaughter. Ships died by the dozens. Some were destroyed by the Sentinel's weapons. Others collided with debris while trying to maneuver. Still others crashed into each other as their rigid formations fell apart. The rings of Saturn filled with explosions and wreckage. Admiral watched in horror as his armada crumbled. He had lost 100 ships in the first hour alone. His communications channels were flooded with distress calls and screams. Captains begged for orders. Officers reported systems failures and hull breaches. It was chaos, pure and absolute. "Pull back," he finally ordered, his voice cracking. "All ships retreat to clear space." But the retreat only made things worse. The Sentinel pursued, emerging from the rings like a predator chasing wounded prey. It tore into the fleeing ships without mercy. Another 100 fell before the survivors escaped the debris field. 300 ships remained. They formed a desperate defensive sphere around the 3 dreadnoughts, trying to protect their most powerful weapons. Admiral ordered a concentrated assault. Every ship fired at once, filling space with enough energy to vaporize a moon. The Sentinel flew straight into the barrage. "Shields holding," reported, his voice tight. 70%, 60, 50. Daniel gripped his armrests. This was the moment of truth. Either the Sentinel could withstand their combined firepower or everything ended here. 40%, 35. The ship shuddered as a particularly powerful blast struck the shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. 30%, holding at 30. Arya spoke calmly. "The shields have adapted to their weapons' frequencies. Further degradation will be minimal. We can survive this." Daniel exhaled slowly. Target the lead dreadnought. The Sentinel's main cannon charged. Energy built in the weapon systems until the entire ship hummed with power. Then it fired. A beam of pure gravitational force lanced across space and struck the first dreadnought dead center. The planet killer, 5 kilometers of armored destruction, folded in on itself like paper being crumpled by an invisible hand. Its reactor containment failed. The resulting explosion consumed a dozen nearby ships. "One down," said grimly, "2 to go." The formations broke completely. Ships scattered in every direction, their discipline shattered by fear. They had come to punish rebellious slaves. Instead, they had found their executioner. Pursued the second dreadnought as it tried to flee. The massive ship was too slow to escape. The Sentinel caught it easily and fired again. Another explosion, another wave of debris. The third dreadnought was the Eternal Dominion, Admiral's flagship. It turned to face the Sentinel, its commander choosing to die with dignity rather than run. Every weapon on the massive ship opened fire. The Sentinel took the hits without slowing. Its shields flared and flickered but held. Daniel waited until they were close, so close he could see the details of the enemy ship's hull. Fire! The graviton beam struck true. The Eternal Dominion broke apart, its sections tumbling away into the darkness of space. Admiral died without ever understanding what had happened. He had been so certain of victory. He had been so wrong. The remaining ships fled. They jumped to faster than light without coordinates, without direction, caring only about escape. Of the 500 that had come, fewer than 50 survived. The Battle of Saturn's Rings was over. Humanity had won. On Earth, people watched the sky. They could see the distant flashes of explosions, tiny points of light near the pale band of Saturn. They did not know the details yet, but somehow they knew. When the Sentinel returned to Earth orbit, broadcast the news. The 7th Armada was destroyed. 3 planet killers were gone. The Empire's greatest fleet had been broken by 5 humans and their ancient ship. People celebrated in the streets. They wept and laughed and embraced strangers. They tore down flags and destroyed statues of the Emperor. For the first time in 300 years, they were not afraid. Daniel stood on the bridge of the Sentinel, exhausted but triumphant. His crew slumped in their chairs, drained by hours of combat. They had done the impossible. "Arya," Daniel said quietly, "send a message to the Empire. Tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth is free. And tell them that if they ever come back, they will face the same fate." Message sent, Commander. Looked up from her console. "They will not accept this. They will send more fleets, more armies." "I know," Daniel replied, "but they will not catch us off guard again." He looked out at Earth, blue and green and finally free. This ship was built by our ancestors to defend humanity. They did not get to use it, but they gave us the tools we needed to survive. Now it is our turn to build more ships, more weapons, a real fleet. He turned to face his crew. The war is not over, but today humanity remembered something important. We remembered that we do not surrender, we do not give up, and we never stop fighting. Smiled tiredly. "So what happens now?" Daniel looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire was learning fear for the first time. "Now we take the fight to them." The Sentinel turned toward the darkness between the stars. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was coming for them. And the galaxy would never be the same.